The quirky adventure game Anodyne returns with its sequel, Anodyne 2, where things are quite literally taken to a whole new dimension, as this game is in 3D as well as 2D as well, but the previous game was entirely in 2D, and this one has decided that it's going to play on, this progression of retro games to the 3D platforming and exploration sort of thing, and bring its quirkiness through the 3D adventures as well. But it remains true to its heart with the 2D games, so most of the gameplay will be in the 2D realm, but the overworld, rather than being in the Nexus, is going to be predominantly in the 3D sort of realm. So you'll use the 3D realm to travel around to find the dungeon points, essentially, inside of people. Is the plot point to going down to look for the nanodust inside of these people, where the whole plot line is around the nanodust that's been infecting the world, and now everything is essentially made from dust. But as people throughout the world become obsessed or, twisted in some way by the dust inside of them, it grows to become a significant problem, and your job is to try and eliminate this nanodust from inside of them, to prevent their obsessions or, interests in that sort of way where these strong feelings manifest inside of them. Now, you're aided throughout your quest by the Glandilock seed, which is what you are given at the start of the world, and it remains at the side of your HUD in 2D worlds, and perhaps gets a little too excited by some of the signs that there's a big cluster of nanodust nearby, which it transforms into a card for you, and then you take these back to the centre to upgrade the centre to allow you to explore further into the world and progress the game forward. So there are some sort of clever elements with that, but that's also a plotline to the side. Now, I will suggest that it is an entirely separate game to the original Anodyne, because whilst the original Anodyne was very much about breaking the game, and there were a lot of aspects where you would find extra things and all the cards through breaking the game's boundaries and breaking the game's rules, and it was very much designed around the world's not being what it's meant to be and breaking out of the games in that aspect. Now, this has some aspects that are similar, but it's not really about breaking the game's mechanics. The whole thing about the world maybe not being quite what it seems is more around the plot sort of line. Now, there are a few nods, like a lot of the characters are from the original Anodyne as well, so you might recognise familiar characters, you might recognise familiar places, as some of the maps are again taken aspects from the original thing, so the palettes might be different, but in the 2D worlds there might be some areas that you might recognise and feel very familiar with the layout of. Now, that isn't to say that the entire game isn't entirely broken, because there's at least one NPC that's very much broken and takes you to a special world, so it's not just in the 2D realm. It then takes you to a pseudo point and click sort of realm, whilst it's not a point and click world. On the tertiary aspect, it's hard to describe, so it's like pseudo 3D, but it's actually 2D worlds, and it's more of an adventure game sort of aspect in that sort of interest, and it's got its own story there as well, and that's quite an interesting one where I liked that took that sort of twist. And through that as well, a lot of the narratives are intertwined, so there are a few different narratives that are going on throughout the game, but you'll notice that, for example, in the pseudo 2D 3D world that I've just mentioned, there are some plot lines and aspects that I mentioned there. Then in another world, in the 2D worlds, most of them, they're self-contained universes, again, with no secret sort of ways to break out, for the most part. I found one area that's got a special not necessarily out of bounds, but just an area to traverse that leads to a puzzle to another card. But for the most part, there's lacking of the out of bounds or exploration mechanics that the original game had, and maybe I just haven't found any of them yet, but I haven't found any of the special relics like the cube and the silly sort of things that you could find breaking out of the game in the original game. And even if they weren't hidden out of realms or anything like that. You know, I would have expected them to have been like corporeal things in the 3D worlds, because at times this game actually feels like it might actually be a prequel to Anodyne, and you know, maybe there are explanations as to why that happens, as depending on which ending you get. Things might occur. Now, full disclosure, I've only actually got one of the endings at the moment, at the time of the review, because this game is actually pretty long. It took me around 9 hours to complete to one ending, and that's not the find all the cards and go with the centre's plan ending either. So, spoilers here. You might want to avoid if you want plot lines, but the game is pretty good, so I'm going to avoid the spoilers for the moment, but there will be spoilers coming up. So it's definitely a recommended game, and I will go into the spoilers later. It's the 2D worlds. In Anodyne 1, the whole world was, you know, 2D. You explored it, and you gained powers, and you gained abilities to traverse the world very much differently. This one, it's sort of gated off to where the dust barriers go, and you have to upgrade the centre to unleash more areas, and then find more areas to explore to get more cards and go into more 2D worlds. And it's pretty clever how, as you progress further into the game, you know, some of these 2D worlds become bigger, and like I said, you find the one in the desert that's just an entirely different sort of universe. And, you know, there's things which I'm going to spoil again later. But yeah, I think that it's pretty cool how they've done all of that. But at times, the 3D worlds can be pretty difficult to try and find where you need to go next, especially when there's at least one pseudo-hidden card. It's not really hidden, and you don't have a map at this point to try and find where the cards are, because it won't tell you where the cards are until later. But when you do expand the world, they change it up on you, so you also get the option to find meta coins, and you can buy things from the shop, and one of the things you can buy is something that'll show you on your map where the cards are located, and this is after you've had to already find one of the hidden cards in the overworld and get enough dust to expand the barriers. So, you know, but adding the metacoins gives some sort of aspect to re-explore the overworld, and they even sort of break that fourth wall and be like, you know, we're adding more content for you and giving you more reason to re-explore these areas. And, you know, that's in the usual Anodyne sort of feel of, like, it's a game, but we're also breaking the fourth wall in some ways, but not entirely. So, you know, I thought that was a pretty cool way of doing that. But there wasn't a lot to buy until after you complete the game. Then they add a lot more things in the meta shop to buy. And, you know, perhaps there's more aspects to break out of the game at that point, because, you know, once you complete one ending of the game, the dev does say, well, hey, you know, there's more things to explore here and here, and, you know, maybe they got added after completing the game, especially with the added things to purchase in the metagame. But, you know, it's like this and that. Because the original game, whilst you could pseudo trick your way out of the barriers, after completing the game, it does give you an actual way to break out of the barriers and, you know, break the game. So it might be that this one has given that option as well. But, you know, at this point, the game's released and I'm pressured to do the review now. And it's like, I know how long the game was already, and it's going to take me even longer to find all of these things and do all that. And, you know, it's like, do I then push forward to find all this additional content and give a even fuller review, or do I give a full review as having completed it and spent my entire weekends, you know, literally playing the game to get it completed? But it's a fun game, and, you know, the puzzles are easy enough to solve, but, you know, still provide some sort of interest and challenge. Now, I would suggest that there aren't many enemy varieties or bosses really in this one, whereas the previous one might have had a bit more enemy variety coming at you throughout the game and, you know, more bosses. But you can understand what's going on, because, again, with the story, and whilst it's Anodyne, it's actually a separate universe, so to speak, because, you know, things that... I'm going to now spoil things at this point, because, you know, we've gone in far enough into the review. So, there's the 3D world, and then there's the 2D world, and later on you even get a further shrinking powers to go into the Picoverse, which actually takes you to like an 8-bit Commodore 64 era sort of thing, and these are the most basic of universes, so they're fairly straightforward and lead you to do things. But it's interesting that they give you that. What would be really cool is if you could go back into things that you'd been in previously, like in the centre and people that you'd already cleaned, and that they have actually hidden Picoverse entities inside themselves that would then unlock further areas. Now, maybe they do, and I just haven't had the chance to explore that possibility at this point. But, you know, that'd be cool things that they could do, but I think that they missed out the opportunity to do. And I feel like there would be a great opportunity to have a lot more hidden things. So, there are essentially the two universes, the 3D overworld and then the 2D nanoverse inside of people. And the nanoverse inside of people, mostly it's their subconscious. So you're going through their subconscious and, you know, you're exploring these things. Then you clean out their obsession. And then they're grateful in the overworld that you've deleted their obsession. Now, at one point, there's a split where you go really, really far into the dust, which you're not meant to go into the dust storms because it's meant to be very dangerous for you. But you find a cat dog creature sort of thing, and you end up going inside of that. And it's so far from the centre's influence that the dust universe inside of this person is actually its own living ecosystem with people. And these people actually start needing to eat, and you start needing to eat because you're no longer just a, you know, unsentient life form. And so through going through this, you make friendships, and then you end up playing in that sort of universe for a little bit, and then your Glandilock seed becomes very angry at you for this, and it's like it's trying to control you and conflict your feelings and make you cause problems with the friendships. And there's the whole thing of like the life is the friendships that you've made and all that, and there's some aspects of that in the 2D 3D universe that I mentioned, and then there's some aspects of that mentioned in the overworld, and then that's how you start questioning, is the centre the one that's right? And so, you know, you've got a decision tree at that point. Do you want to confront the centre and fight the centre, or do you want to continue with their plan and just go ahead with it and, you know, bring about the Anodyne? Which, again, I haven't done that ending, but from what I can sort of get the picture of throughout the game is that this is going to be a prequel, and that bringing about the Anodyne just turns the entire 3D universe to dust, and then everyone inside the 3D universe gets sucked into the 2D universe, in the dust universe, because, you know, no one exists any longer, and you've taken all their pieces of their soul to the centre, and, you know, it's in that dust universe that Anodyne, the original one, exists. And there are nods and hints to Anodyne in this, because when you do go into the 2D universe in some points, there's actually the Nexus, and the Nexus does actually exist. And when I first saw it, cleverly, it just seems like it's a nod to the existence of it, and it's gated off, but you can't actually go into it. But actually, through going through other entry points, you do end up in the Nexus, but not a full Nexus, but in just two microscopic environments, which are, again, actually areas from the original game repaleted. So it's like these might have existed beforehand, and it's like not fully built up in the Nexus universe yet. And the Timekeeper does say, hey, you know, what took you so long? It took you 7 hours to get here, because, you know, it took me 7 hours to get to that point of the game where, you know, it feels like, oh, we're actually just getting into the area, and there's bigger worlds to go explore at that point in the 2D universe, and, you know, more secrets to be held and found at that point. So I liked that it did branch out to give you bigger universes to go explore at that point. But again, like I say, it feels like it's just an expansion, and I remember from the original game that the Nexus Keeper, the Timekeeper, does suggest that someone had come before and did all this. So, you know, it feels like maybe this is the before. So, you know, there's hints towards things like that. But again, I'm lacking the ability to go really break out of bounds and break out of the game. And while I have personally done this, there's there's nothing to be found outside of the realms of the game in the 3D world at the very least, and in the 2D world it doesn't seem like there's any capability to use the exploration tech from the original game, like side scrolling across the world and things like that. So, it's like if you're expecting these and expecting things to be breaking out of the bounds, I'm just going to suggest that, these things don't exist. But I do like how they've gone about the game, and it's got an interesting storyline, and it's pretty gripping, so, that's pretty cool. And I haven't necessarily spoiled too much other than, maybe the centre isn't to be trusted, but, who knows? Who knows if their grand plan is even a thing, because I haven't fully followed it through. It's just that, like I say, with the 2D universe where you go in and, everyone is exploring and you discover that it's not obsession or, bad, negative things. It's actually emotion that you're removing from all the characters. You're removing love and, the one boss that actually exists, and I say boss with exclamation points and, whatever, the shift to, shift to, whatever those are. Yes, those. Boss. Because the two keys of love shoots love at each other, and you're caught between the love, and you have to dodge the love. That's the only real boss, other than the final boss, that I've encountered in the game, and it just feels like, maybe there could have been more midway bosses in the game to go experience and, fight against, and a bit more enemy variety would have been pretty cool. But you do get a lot of game out of this, it's a pretty lengthy game, so you will get your money's worth. And like I say, it is fun. It's just, you don't necessarily get the entire Anodyne breaking the game mechanic that was in the original game. Like, they had designed it so you could break the game and defeat it in 10 minutes, whereas in this one, it's like, it just doesn't feel like you can break the game quite as much, and, you find things out of the realm, like shadows of things that really didn't serve any other purpose other than just being like, hey, you've got these great collectibles that you found out of bounds as some sort of rewards. I just want some of those, they're the things that I want to be able to find and, break out of bounds and explore the negative realm and the minus realm, even if it's like some sort of pseudo minus realm in the 3D universe, like behind mountains, and, actually, because in 3D games you can end up out of bounds, and there is a specific out of bounds look to 3D games from seeing things from the wrong sort of side and textures outside the sort of universe. And I feel like they could have exploited that to have out of bounds areas that you could go into to find these sort of things in the 3D realm. And, it's this aspect that I'm kind of missing in Anodyne 2, but still, it doesn't take away from the fact that it's a good game, and it's got a good plot, and I've had a lot of fun with it. It's just I really would have loved to have seen these sort of things, because that's what Anodyne was to me. It was breaking out of the game and finding these things in the out of bounds with the deliberate out of bounds textures and deliberate things being broken that's really missing in this, because that's just what Anodyne was to me, the broken out of bounds aspects that I'm missing and wanting. So it's like, it's just what I'm expecting and lacking. So if you take that away from it and you don't expect that, you're gonna have a really enjoyable game and a good experience. So just expect that you're not going to be able to break these things, and don't expect to break everything, and you can have a much better time of it, because you're not going to disappoint yourself by not being able to do it, which I feel like I disappointed myself through wanting this sort of breaking aspect that isn't actually in the game, because I did really keep trying to break out of the bounds at every possible opportunity just to see if there was anything there. But, you know, just take it as it is. Each universe in the 2D realm is its own self-contained universe, and again, you know, maybe that limits the amount that they could break, because there's only so far that you can go in these microscopic 2D realms. But, you know, they're self-contained dungeons, they're pretty cool, and there is a Nexus world, again, that leads to a bigger world that does have some sort of exploration aspects to it, and, you know, hidden things to find, but again, not really breaking out of the areas or breaking the game as you might have expected in Anodyne. So yeah, take the story as it goes, enjoy the plot, and you'll have a lot of fun with it. I definitely recommend giving it a purchase.